Good morning, everyone. I will now start the issues and updates with County Administrator Gary Schmidt on this December 6, 2022. Gary, what's up next?
Thank you, Chair Smith. We are having two sessions of issues today. We will do this session for 1 hour, 11 until 11:15, and then we'll reconvene at 1:30 p.m. We'll get through as much as we can this morning, but we'll be back in the afternoon. We'll start, Chair, if you'd please convene as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District.
I will recess as the Board of County Commissioners and convene as the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District.
This is the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District Advisory Board and Commission appointment. Tony, go ahead, please.
Milwaukee Community Center Advisory Board, staffed by North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District, has 3 openings on their board due to member resignations and term expirations. During a recruitment process, 3 applications were received and 3 applications are recommended for appointment. Those recommendations are Rebecca Hollenbeck to a 1st term, Paul Ellison to a 2nd term, and Joel Bergman to a 4th term.
I'll entertain a motion from Commissioners.
I move we approve the slate.
Second.
Commissioner Schrader has moved that we appoint to the Milwaukee Community Center Advisory Board Rebecca Hollenbach, Paul Ellison, Joel Bergman. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Tony, please take the poll.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chair. Would you now reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners?
I will now recess as the NCPR district and reconvene as the Board of County Commissioners.
All right, next is the Clackamas County Replacement Courthouse update. We have Nancy Bush, County Operating Officer, who will introduce a team from Fengate, who are our project partners. And this is an opportunity for an update for you, Commissioners, and for you to ask any questions you wish. So Nancy, go ahead, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. I am Nancy Bush. I'm the Clackamas County Operating Officer. Today I have a hat on of the Project Manager for the County Courthouse. So we do have a lot that's been going on. There has been a lot going on in the field yet, but we have a lot of trucks going in and out today. But we wanted to give you an update of what's going on and what you're going to be seeing over the next few months. So today I have Carl Schaefer with me, and he is the Project Executive at Clackamas Progress Partners. He also has someone with him, and I'll let him get started and let him introduce his guest.
Please come forward. Please come forward, and both of you gentlemen can introduce yourself as you speak, so go ahead, sir.
Good morning, Chair Smith, Commissioners, County staff, and others joining us today. My name is Carl Schaefer. I have the pleasure to be here today representing Clackamas Progress Partners, a consortium of Fengate, PCL Construction, and Honeywell. The team chose to design, build, finance, operate, and maintain your new Clackamas County Circuit Courthouse under our public-private partnership agreement. The P3 project delivery model is a proven and effective way to bring much-needed infrastructure and facilities into existence. The team we have assembled for your courthouse project is comprised of only the best individuals in our areas of expertise. We thank you for this opportunity, for your trust and confidence, and look forward to our 30-plus year relationship together. I'm also joined by Mr. John Kinderchuk, Project Director with PCL Construction, who in a few moments will take us through the update on the progress achieved thus far. But before I hand it over to John, as we all know, this project has been in the works for several decades. I would like to take this opportunity to recognize those who worked for many years to bring this project to reality. Thanks to you all, whoever and wherever you may be. I'd also like to extend appreciation to Mrs. Nancy Bush and county staff, WT Partnership, the owner's advisor, Judge Steele and the Oregon Department of Justice, the Oregon City Planning Department and City Manager for working with us on the permitting process. And finally, the many user groups who will eventually occupy the new courthouse, all of whom we have been working with for several months on design development. I'll now invite Mr. John Kinderchuk, Project Director with PCL Construction, to take us through the presentation for today. Thank you.
Go ahead, please introduce.
Thank you very much, Carl. It's my pleasure to be presenting the design build status of the Clackamas Courthouse on behalf of Project Company and the Clackamas team. Today, I'm going to be reviewing the milestones as they pertain to the construction and design chain of events, the permitting status to date and our achievements, design development and what we've accomplished to date and where we're going, and give you some insight in what the enabling and early works construction activities that you see going on outside entail. So there are 4 major fast-track design and construction aspects of our project schedule that I want to share with you. Design development happens through July 2022 on to September 2023. It includes the validation of design development as it pertains to 100% schematic design, 100% design development, 50% construction drawings, and a 100% construction drawings. The permitting process happens between August 2022 to August 2023 and includes our land use, engineering, utilities, and buildings. And the last one I'm going to address today is the construction activities as they pertain to enabling works, early works, structural, and the balance of the building, including hard and soft landscaping and the finishing around the job. Today, we're not going to address closeout because that's in the future, of course, but we'll leave that up to our future meetings to touch on where that will go at that time. So what I've presented here is a graphic that shows you the overarching timeline of the project. So don't let it scare you. I'm going to break it down into small parts so that you have an idea of where this is going and what we're supposed to be sharing with you today. So as of today's date, which is the beginning of December, we have completed our financial close, which was in August of 2022. We have our land use permit application that has been completed and deemed complete now with the Permitting and Planning Department for review. That's going to public notice now. And we've also completed our 100% schematic design development. Now, permitting achievements to date include the Department of Environmental Quality, so that includes land use capabilities, erosion and prevention and sedimentation control, and the public review period is complete. We also have partial demolition permit in place for the outdoor rec center areas and any outhouses on the project site that I will address later. And this includes partial demo of the site, hazardous materials reporting, the tree protection and removal plan, any abatement, preliminary land use, and pre-con meeting has been completed. So now I'm going to take you through what permitting that we've completed to date, and then get into what's left. So we have the enabling works permitting pending, the early works permit pending, the land use permit pending, the structural permit, and building permit. So I've highlighted these for you in these yellow tags to give you an understanding of what the associated dates are with those. Next, I'd like to address design development and what we've achieved to date. So to date, we have, as I mentioned earlier, 100% schematic design development completed. In March of 2023, we'll have 100% of design development completed. In May of 2023, we'll have 50% of the construction drawings completed. And rounding out the conclusion, in September 2023, we'll have 100% of the construction drawings completed. As part of our design development meetings, we have established touch points for stakeholders that include the HJs, the state, and Clackamas County, the user groups, examples being the...
May I interrupt here?
Certainly.
Why is our screen blank? Why is this blank? What are we supposed to be looking at something? I don't know what those little orange, there we go. Okay, thank you. Because my PowerPoint is different.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bit of a lag.
Okay, bit of a lag. Go ahead, please continue.
Stakeholder groups, including HJs, state, and Clackamas County, the user groups that include such entities as judicial, public defense, and sheriff, focus groups that have been brought together that include specific consultants and/or trade specialists to handle things like security, door hardware, and things that are particular to a courthouse, and furniture, fixture, equipment, which we call FF&E groups. All of which were to reconcile the details of the design to meet basis of design intent, programming requirements, and to make sure that the design and construction standards that are in the project agreement are met. Next, we're going to talk about construction. So this is where the rubber hits the road and you start to realize the activities that we're actually doing on site. It includes what we refer to as the enabling works and early works, which is addressing what the site already has versus what we are going to install. I'm also going to walk you through the courthouse mock-up that we're doing. So the courtroom mock-ups are being done off-site, and I'll get into a little bit of what that entails. The utilities that we're going to finish before the end of the year and get into, and the mask excavation. So I'll start with the off-site courtroom mock-ups. So the mock-up scenario will take place from November 2022 to March 2023. 3 different courtroom types have been mocked up in an off-site 11,000 square foot warehouse space just outside of Portland, Oregon, to be able to evaluate room and furniture massing and general layout, access and egress requirements, including power and data locations throughout the courtroom for accessibility. These 3 different types, including a standard size courtroom, a larger size courtroom, and what is referred to as a high volume size courtroom, are all being addressed and mocked up. The design team will be working closely with the judicial user groups to assure that all aspects of the courtroom designs are vetted with the parameters of the design construction standards and meeting the basis of design and programming intent following the project agreement. Next, I'm going to walk you through what we're seeing outside and the most predominant features of the construction site. As a reference point for the group, I've added a big egg in the middle of the page, which represents your existing courtyard and circle of honor. And this plan view drawing is orientated looking west. So the green line that you see outlining our DNC construction limits is the fence, and the site trailers are shown in red off to the right. The most prominent features, of course, are the 3 gates to the access of the site, Gate 1, Gate 2, and Gate 3. And this is what you saw kicked off in the beginning of November. Also take note that the site parameters are a funny shape right now because we're still allowing access to both the Hilltop building and the Stewart building within the actual DNC limits or the design and construction limits. And that will be closed off once we take possession of those buildings. That will happen in the new year. The next slide I'm going to share provides a graphic representation of some of the site activities that you're seeing now, with rock trucks and heavy equipment moving on the southeast corner relative to this plan view drawing, Gate 2. And what you're seeing there is the temporary road for construction access being installed so that we can access the perimeter of the site. And we're moving from Gate 2 around to Gate 3. The other aspects that you'll find within this plan view drawing are highlighted in the brown color at the top. So top and center represents the building demolition that's going to happen in the new year and some of the outbuildings that I mentioned previously. Those include the basketball court. There's a small garage. There is a canopy that's on the west side of the existing building, and there's a small shed in the very top right-hand corner, all of which will be demoed to make room for the access road and what will eventually be the ring road for the project. The next slide, I'm going to focus on the utilities. So decommissioning and/or removing of existing sewer and water main lines running east-west through the center of the project. So what I'm referring to are the lines that are straight above the egg or the circle of honor, if you will. Reestablishing new sewer and water manholes, reestablishing new sewer and water mains to new manholes, and establishing the new design and construction limits as we take over the two new buildings. And also establishing temporary and permanent electrical duct banks, which you see highlighted in red. And last but not least, where you're really going to start to see heavy machinery work in, is the removal of existing parking lot surfaces, parking lot lights and curbs required to regrade the site and establish the lower level grade elevations required for building foundations and building utilities. And those are highlighted in the yellow and brown colors. We refer to that as the mass excavation. So without going into further detail about what comes in the new year, because we'll provide another update come early spring, this is what you're seeing outside.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this update. It's very much appreciated. I have a few questions, and probably the board does too. On one of your earlier documents, you made mention of the public review period complete. What does public review mean?
The public review period is when we've submitted our final set of permitting drawings for the Type 2 land use, and that it's now subject to the public providing comment. So the action item that we had taken last week is that we've created public notices. There's 10 of them in total.
10?
Around the site, yes, that are placed in appropriate areas that have been provided to us by the planning department. And there is a 2-week period where the public has to address those notices if they have any queries and or other, and that's the status that we're at with.
And those 10 notices that were mailed out is typical of any land use situation where property owners within so many feet of the construction site are notified. Is it 250 feet or 200, or what is that? Do you remember?
I don't recall exactly what that
Okay,
statistic
it's something
is.
like that, or 500, I don't know. Don't quote me on that. Thank you for that. You said at the southeast corner on Gate 2, that road that's out here we're watching, you said that was a temporary road.
Correct.
Will that not be used to access the courthouse once it's complete?
It's a similar location, but right now the construction activities that you see are just temporary, meaning the actual buildup of the finished construction road will happen, or sorry, the finished design will happen much later in the process.
So that will convert to a permanent road for access later?
Correct.
And at the northwest corner of the property, will there also be an access road where the parking, I assume, where the parking lots are?
Correct.
So there will be 2 ways to get to our courthouse?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. These are all the questions I have for these two. I do have a question to Nancy Bush in a minute, but Commissioners, do you have any comments? Oh, Commissioner Scholl, go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Schaefer, Mr. Kinderchuk. Did I pronounce that right?
Correct.
I appreciate the work you're doing for us and for building us a courthouse that lasts 100 years so nobody has to sit here and worry about this for 100 years. Appreciate it. Couple of questions. At what date do you complete the seismic engineering? You mentioned that you're going to have construction drawings done by end of August of '23, right?
Right.
When is the seismic engineering done?
The seismic engineering is very much a part of the design development ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
When we have permitted drawings for structure, which will kick off with the 100% design development set, that will go in for evaluation with the engineering department. A lot of that work has been premeditated within the engineering of the structural design.
Okay. And on that, it's interesting that you're going to do 3 courtroom mock-ups. Was that an original idea, or is that something that's you've come up with recently?
Well, there's 16 courtrooms that
Yeah.
will make up the scope of work. What we've chosen is 3 different typologies that give us a broader band of opportunity to make sure that we've vetted all the requirements seen in the D&C standards, meeting the basis of design requirements. So we feel that the 3 that we've chosen, the 3 typologies, provide not only the design group and the construction group, but also the user groups a very good idea in what it is that they have to bring to fruition.
Judge Steele and our people are going to be involved with the assessment of those?
Correct.
Okay. One final question. On the furniture, fixtures, and equipment, what's the process for selecting that
Good question.
equipment?
So we had, when we were awarded the project, we had a furniture, fixtures, and equipment list. That, of course, is going to evolve over time as the user groups start to finalize how these spaces are going to be used and whether or not they need 2 tables instead of 1 or 3 chairs, a certain type of shelving. So as that process matures, the furniture and fixtures list matures, and then we compare that to the power and data requirements for such furniture and the overall layout. And that process is quite lengthy, so we've actually started the furniture, fixture, and equipment user group sessions right now, so that in a year or 2 from now, that scope is fully vetted and understood by all parties.
Okay, thank you. One last question. How is your relationship with the city of Oregon City on permitting?
Really good. So far, we've partnered with the county to work through our applications and also the permitting requirements in terms of approvals as it relates to the milestones in the construction schedule. And we've set up various touch points with the planning department that we're doing with the county to assure that we can stay on top of meeting contractual milestone dates.
All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Commissioner Savas?
Yeah, appreciate the update. I have a question on the temporary access road. So I note that the wheel wash is at the end of Kane Road right out here. So I presume ingress will be on Warner Milne and egress will be on Kane Road?
For the most part, the circulation pattern will almost always move one way, depending on what we have to pick off trucks. And the adjacency within a trailer load would be the only dictating factor in why the circulation pattern would change.
Okay. And I presume that the intent of the wheel wash is to make sure that Kane Road and other roads are kept clean as
Correct.
possible and not
Correct.
have a lot of debris on them. Thank you.
That's right.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, thank you for being here on this update. It's pretty exciting times here in Clackamas County. I'm interested in understanding a little bit more on the design development meetings. I had the really wonderful opportunity, I was practicing law in Multnomah County when Multnomah County's courthouse was being designed and was able to participate in those community outreach groups with users of the future courthouse being the attorneys and other members of the community. So I'm just interested in what that process will be envisioned. Will there be an opportunity for people to weigh in on the different design elements? Any open houses planned with mock-ups or anything?
Great question. So one of the unique aspects of a P3 and the design development stages within a P3 is that we work with what we call a design and construction standard, which is part and parcel of what we find in our agreement, which provides the framework of the design. So we'll call it the goalposts. And the design development process in this case is bringing in all of the user groups, the stakeholders, the people who are actually going to function in these spaces to help hone and establish the details of the design as we move through working and understanding whether or not we're actually hitting the design and construction standards. We also have a document called the Basis of Design, which is an overarching narrative of how the programming and the building has to function over its entire life cycle. And so not only do we have a design team that's moving towards bringing that to fruition, but as I said, we strategically bring in all of the user groups, and I'll just use that as a broad term because it's all kinds of folks, to help us shape what the project's going to actually look like and function like at the end.
That's great. Thank you for that.
I find your question interesting because you, as a lawyer, are a regular courthouse user, where I am not. So I'm sure there's a lot that goes into that. You said one of the courtrooms was going to be supersized for, I can imagine why, but can you tell me why one courtroom would be much larger than the others?
One is called a high-volume courtroom, and it's not necessarily supersized, comparatively speaking, but it's bigger by, say, 10 feet in either direction. The main difference between the high-volume courtroom and the other two of the typologies that we're building is that right now, as the design is developed, it doesn't include two off-break rooms that are at the base of the entry. And one of the other two typologies have two break rooms, or what I would refer to as small offices or meeting spaces. So it's got much more seating to it. And that's really what differentiates it from the other two typologies.
Any other questions for the panel today? I really want to thank you for coming up here in person. It means a lot to us as we move forward. I look forward to more regular reviews. I know they're scheduled to come forward as I look out my window, and I think the BC looks out the window and say, oh, this is new today, this is new today. It's kind of exciting, very much. Nancy Bush, could you come up, and I'd like to ask you a question. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to be here.
Oh, all ours. Nancy, we talked earlier about public engagement
Yes, ma'am.
and outreach. Could you brief the board on what that was? You had a meeting when?
So the first meeting that we were just talking about was actually very early on in the process, and it was actually part of one of the permitting pieces that we had to do for Oregon City. So that was actually done in person, and it was done in the PSB in the evening. We did have, I felt like we had really good attendance to that meeting. We had a lot of good questions, and, many of them, there were a couple that actually said, it's like, well, we know this has been coming, so, now that it's here, we have these questions. Many of them were here when the PSB and the DSB were built as well, and know what to expect, because many of them obviously were from the neighborhoods. We will continue to have meetings with the public. Probably the next one will be in the spring, March, April timeframe. I don't know what that looks like yet, but we will be having more meetings with the public as we go through this process.
So you had some of the neighbors show up.
Yes, ma'am.
That are surrounding here,
Yes, ma'am.
and their general comments, just generally speaking.
Just generally speaking, there were some questions about the building itself, the structure on the outside, why it didn't have certain things or why did it have certain things, those types of things. We did have an architect that was there to answer those questions. There were a couple of questions. We do have a couple of families that are still on wells, And apparently when the PSB and the DSB were built, they had cloudy water, so they had questions as well. So we may be having to work with them as we move through. They had questions about noise, those types of things.
Okay, good. Was there any dissenting views on whether the county should be constructing this or not?
Not at that meeting, no.
Because they'd always heard about it, is that right?
Yeah, there was a couple comments, we know it's been on the plan a long time, and we knew it was coming, and now, I think one person's like, and now it's here, and we know it's going to happen, and here are our concerns, or here are our questions.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. Any other comments for Nancy on the public outreach? And I really do appreciate it. It's very important as we go along in the process.
Absolutely.
Good. Thank you very
All right,
much,
thank you.
gentlemen. Nancy Bush for coming forward. Judge Kathleen Steele, I recognize your presence today. Thank you for volunteering all of your steadfast hours on this to making sure the project goes through. We appreciate your participation as well. Gary, what's next?
Next are requests for consent agenda, starting with elected officials, the sheriff. Item 1, approval of a board order authorizing purchase of 60 Panasonic Tough Books, docking stations, and DVD drives from Daytech Incorporated. Purchase order value is $186,894. Funding is through budgeted county general funds. Nancy Artman is the finance manager of the Sheriff's Office. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. As Administrator Schmidt mentioned, we are seeking to purchase 60 laptops, docking stations, and DVD drives. This is replacement equipment that is budgeted. Because it is more than $150,000, it does require the signature of the chair or her designee.
Are these tough books that go in the patrol cars?
They are.
Okay, but it's not the office equipment?
Correct.
Not- Okay, good.
It's one and the same for our patrol folks.
Oh, so when the deputy takes their tough book out of the patrol car, then they take it to the office?
Correct.
So, every deputy is assigned their own tough book?
They are.
Oh, well, that's good. Very nice. Any questions or comments? Seeing no objections? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark,
Next.
Go ahead.
That's okay. That's okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, next, technology services. Item 1, approval of a service level agreement with the Westland Wilsonville School District for new dark fiber connections. Total value is $265,500 for 10 years. Funding is through the Westland Wilsonville School District. No county general funds are involved. Lanu Parapilli, Director of Technology Services. Duke Dexter, Broadband Manager. Go ahead.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Wilsonville School District is building a new middle school, and they have contracted CBX to do this work for them. And the total contract amount is $265,500, and the lease term is 10 years. And we are not using any county general funds for this. The CBX will be reimbursed for this work. And CBS has the resources and the ability to complete this work within the deadline. So we request you to approve this SLA with the school district. Thank you.
When will this work be completed? Don't know.
Yeah, so the school will be opening fall of '23. We'll need to complete it roughly June of '23.
Okay, good. Wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful. I'm glad we're helping out the school district. Any comments or questions? Seeing no objections? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, Health, Housing, and Human Services. Item 1, approval of a revenue amendment increasing funding and updating program element language to the intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Health Authority for operation as a local public health authority, and the amendment net value is $56,965.15. The total agreement is now $16,086,638.46 for 2 years. Funding is through the Oregon Health Authority. No county general funds are involved. Rod Cook, Director of Health, Housing, and Human Services. Go ahead.
Good morning. This amendment updates the program element language. It decreases the fiscal year '22 funding and increases the funding for fiscal year 2023. So that's why you see that net gain there.
Questions or comments on this particular item? Seeing no objections, Rod.
Item 2, approval of an amendment extending the duration of the negotiation period of the ambulance contract with American Medical Response Northwest. The amendment is a 6-month extension at no cost. The contract value remains at $60 million over 10 years. Funding is through American Medical Response Northwest. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, and as Administrator mentioned, this amendment will extend the negotiation period to July 1, 2023, allowing time to implement some of the EMS, Emergency Medical Services Consultant recommendations to the new contract and the ambulance service plan.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 3, approval of an amendment increasing funding of a non-federal subrecipient grant to Northwest Housing Alternatives for system diversion, homelessness prevention, and rapid rehousing services. Amendment value is $144,000 for 1 year. The grant value is increased to $744,000 for 5.25 years. Funding is through the Oregon Housing and Community Services Department. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, this amendment extends the eligible grant expenditure period by 1 year to June 30, 2023. It adds funds during the extended expenditure period to continue system diversion, homelessness prevention, and rapid rehousing. In fiscal year 2021, 48 households were served under the first contract.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 4, approval of an amendment increasing funding of a non-federal subrecipient grant to Northwest Family Services for youth-focused system diversion, homelessness prevention, and rapid rehousing services. The agreement value is $55,200 for 1 year. Grant value is now increased to $216,200 for 4.75 years. Funding is through the Oregon Housing and Community Services Department. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, this contract with Northwest Family Services is very similar to the one we just approved in scope, except this contract is focused on youth system diversion, homelessness prevention, and rapid rehousing services.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 5, approval of an amendment modifying the scope of work of a master grant agreement from Oregon Housing and Community Services to administer homeless response and prevention services, Service Provider Investment Program, and Department of Energy bipartisan infrastructure legislation programs. The amendment has no fiscal impact. The grant value remains at $31,747,027. Funding is through the Oregon Housing and Community Services Department. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, as mentioned, this amendment makes administrative changes and adds program elements that outline the county's requirements as a sub-grantee to ease some of the administrative burden. So this basically will help us move the monies quicker to the clients.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
Item 6, approval of an amendment increasing funding of a non-federal subrecipient grant to Clackamas Women's Services for system diversion, homelessness prevention, and rapid rehousing services. The amendment value is $96,000 for 1 year. Grant value is increased to $656,000 for 5.25 years. Funding is through the Oregon Housing and Community Services Department. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, this amendment extends the eligible grant expenditure period by 1 year to June 30, 2023, and adds additional funds to pay for services provided during the extension period. Last year, or in fiscal year 21-22, they assisted 55 households.
Questions or comments? Seeing no objections.
All right, thank you. That is a request for consent agenda. All of these items will be on this Thursday's business meeting agenda. That is all for this morning. The afternoon session, we have speakers who are planning on this afternoon. So with your approval, Chair, we could adjourn for this morning.
Yes, seeing no objections. Any commissioner comments at this time? Okay. Seeing no further business, we will recess until 1:30 this afternoon.